Hey folks, this is Brian, and you're listening to the Mission Sicily podcast. And hey guys, welcome back to the Mission in Sicily. I'm Brian, and I'll be your guide to some of the missions and ministry that's happening here in the southernmost autonomous region of Italy, widely considered the crossroads of cultures, the melting pot of the Mediterranean, and one of the few European regions that sits completely within the famed 1040 missions window. If you missed our year-end review of 2022, make sure you check that out. Lots of good information there about what you have been sowing into, especially the last couple of years as we rebooted Mission Sicily. And, with your prayers and your monthly support, your encouragement, what you have contributed to and made happen. Yeah, so please go back and check that out. Everything you need to know with regards to this mission and ministry in Sicily and what has been made possible by God's grace and your generosity over the last year. Thank you for your support. For those of you just joining us, let me pause for a minute just to tell you what you're listening to. Maybe you stumbled across this podcast because of the title. You're wondering, who is this? What's going on? Well, this is the podcast version of our monthly update, and you can subscribe to that as well, just going to missionsicily.com and click Connect. That's it, missionsicily.com, click Connect. And you'll get a summarized version of what we're talking about here, but you get the bonus of a lot of pictures, sometimes some videos, links to different things, and it's a little bit more, easier possibly to navigate. But if you are commuting, if you're in your car, if you're taking a walk, if you're just in your house doing some housework, cleaning up, whatever, and you're listening to the podcast, welcome. Our heart is to provide you with a window through which to observe the labor taking place in this part of the world for the King and his kingdom. Well, who are we then? Well, we are an interdenominational evangelical mission focused on three main things. We are now, and we will continue to do these things. Number one, make disciples. Number two, plant churches. And number three, build bridges of hope all over Sicily. And we've been doing that since 2013. God has been generous with his grace on us, gracious with his generosity. Here's what I mean. We've seen so many come to faith, be baptized, discipled to maturity over the years. But what we're witnessing now is a unique groundswell of disciple makers who are themselves making new disciples. This has been our focus since after the pandemic. We've explained that in great detail over the last year, and it isn't slowing down at all. There's never been a more exciting time to be a part of Mission Sicily. So welcome through your consistent prayer, regular financial support, unwavering commitment. This ministry has been sustained and is thriving despite many setbacks and obstacles over the past decade. We are so grateful for those of you who have sown, who visited us here in Sicily and stuck with us. Thank you. If you've been following more recently, just over the last few months, then you know that we have an expansion coming up. So excited. You've been praying and sowing into us financially, and your contribution is making this expansion possible. I'll tell you in a minute how you can financially contribute, donate to that. We've got a GoFundMe set up just for the expansion part, and I'll give you more details on that in a minute. But over the years, some of you have asked about Gino, our future plans. So I want to bring you up to speed on this episode right at the outset of 2020, give you some updates on the land that you can find pictures of in the email version, and then let you know about some folks that have just finished spiritual formation processes and become leaders and disciple makers right here in our town of Belpaso, where we are on the eastern seaboard of this triangular-shaped island in the middle of the Mediterranean. And we find all this very exciting. I mean, this is setting a new precedent for our disciple-making movement here in Sicily. Before we get into all those details, let me do what we do. So many times we zoom out a little bit and kind of set the stage, the theater, if you will, that all of this mission and ministry is happening in. So on a grander European scale, if we were to look at that, we still have an energy crisis. Prices are soaring. There's still a war going on, several actually armed conflicts here in Europe. What we've been calling Putin's aggression continues. We still have a collection of Ukrainians living here in our town of Belpaso. We still have songs and scripture verses, half in Italian and half in Ukrainian. And in fact, more are coming into Italy, trying to do business, make a living, survive. To put it bluntly, in case you haven't been following all of this, Russia is currently occupying Crimea, which is Ukraine, and as well as a region in Moldova and Georgia. It is essentially an international armed conflict, primarily between Ukraine and Russia, and this conflict has been going on now over a year. Can you believe it? Reading from one news source, Carnegie Europe, the report is that parts of Ukraine are absolutely destroyed, in ruins. Here's a quote: "So many civilians have been killed, so many cities, towns, and villages have been destroyed. As winter sets in, we're now midwinter, so much of the infrastructure has been deliberately targeted. Much of the population," just imagine this, it's cold, there's snow on the ground, much of the population is without water, heating, basic services, food, shelter, or safety. Reports from Mariupol, which Russia bombed and then occupied back in June, are just absolutely shocking. So there's just a little window into what's happening. And, this is creating a new refugee and migrant crisis. If you followed us over the last decade, you know that we've been through several waves of migration crises. These crises have arisen from the south, the sub-Saharan desert region, that belt underneath the Sahara Desert, those mid-range African countries coming up over the desert into the North African countries, getting on boats and getting across, being trafficked literally, and falling right into the hands of the mafia, a lot of them, as soon as they get over here. But this aggression that continues is creating a deliberate rift between once allied EU countries. And it's for many, still a crippling energy crisis in major European cities. Maybe you're thinking, Brian, why are you talking so much about this? I understand this is the context. Well, this sets the context for which ministry is happening here. Think about it this way. When borders were open, it was only a 3-hour flight between our two countries, Italy and Ukraine, roughly like going from New York to Miami. But we're feeling the pinch all the way down here in the southernmost region. You can imagine the northern towns even more, seeing the refugees come in and bearing the brunt of it. This presents challenges, but also, thankfully, new ministry opportunities, as we've reported in previous episodes. Italy is a huge supporter of Ukraine, has been for years. There are thousands upon thousands here. And before the conflict, Italy was the preferred host country of most Ukrainians who left their country seeking employment, really more than any other country in the EU, which brings up the economy here in Italy. Just recently, as reported by the New York Times, Italy is expected to have the slowest economic growth in the EU this year. And while its economy is recovering from the COVID crisis, you know that it was hit with blunt force trauma from that crisis. Italy is facing an existential crisis now that threatens the fate of the entire European Union. What's been called the 2022 Italian crisis is labeled, and I'm just quoting here, a toxic cocktail of excessive debt, poor demographics, and political instability. Yay, fun times. Oh, man. Italy at the moment, just, looking at what's going on here in January is largely shut down. This is the normal feria season. Feria is kind of a leave of absence for a lot of workers. You're shutting down the business. So much of the current economy revolves around tourism, and so it takes they'll take their break in the deadness of winter, so to speak, and they'll close up the restaurants. Some hotels close. Even like in my town here of Belpasso, the last festa, the last holiday, is the 8th of January, Epiphany. And so from the 9th, usually for a good 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks, the rest of January, everything just kind of shuts down. And so, we have these little coffee shop called bars. We just call them bars here. And, 8 bars in the town, well, probably 5 or 6 of those are closed during this period. It's just normal. This is what happens when you work in hospitality and tourism type industries. You got to take your days off. So the inconvenience is basically for me, Gino, Simone, Sebastiano, some of the guys, is finding that open bar so that we can have our morning meetings and things like that. So, it's a third world problem, right? Anyway, following the holidays and into February, we'll start to come back into more normality. But I'm grateful, and so are the cats, to have a break from all the incessant bell ringing and constant fireworks for different saints. My cats have shared their appreciation for the brief respite. And so that brings us to Sicily. We're on the cusp of a brand new year, and that means 3 big things for us. Here's what I'm excited about sharing with you today. We've begun a brand new season of this podcast. Woohoo! Welcome to Season 3. This is Episode 1. And what began as an add-on to the newsletter over the years has taken really a primary role. It's now the primary vehicle by which to communicate to our partners. I remember doing some fundraising years ago and asking pastors as we would go around to different churches, hey, what's the number one complaint you have as a pastor, as a leader, when you're connecting with a missionary? And they said back to me without hesitation, either bad or no communication. Wow. So we've always tried to communicate well here, and we're open to ideas of how to improve that. I've gotten a lot of good feedback on this podcast just because it makes listening, that possible, and it's just an easier format media through which to receive the information. We've always tried to communicate well, and we're looking for new ways. That said, I've got some videos coming up. Some of you may have already seen them. If you are connected to our Instagram, either Instagram or Facebook or I'm trying to think. We do have a YouTube channel, brand new channel for Mission Sicily opened up. You can connect to all of those in our print version or go to the website and look under the word connect. But there are various ways that you might have already stumbled across one of our new videos coming out. It's a little 3-part mini-series where I'm just interviewing Gino. I can sit here and talk all day. I could. I don't think you'd appreciate that, but I could sit here and talk all day. It's more entertaining, I think, and hopefully exciting to see Gino and hear him talk a little bit. Obviously, he's talking in Italian, so I'm doing some translation there, but you can at least get to see him and hear a little bit of what his thought process is. Somebody from the church saw the video and said, Gino, you're so stoic, you're so concentrated. He says, well, I'm really serious, when I talk about mission in the church, and I want people to know that this is a very serious serious work. It's a tiring, exhausting work, but praise God, we're seeing fruit from it. And so, yeah, that was funny. But anyway, got some other changes coming up, trying to have a bigger impact on you, the listener, the partner, the friend of Mission Sicily. Speaking of you, we're celebrating together this year 10 years of mission and ministry here in Sicily. Wow. I mean, I think back to when I first visited Sicily. This was, the first Gulf War, the first President Bush in the military coming over here. God put a hook in my heart for Italy, for Sicily, for the islands around here, and getting the gospel just saturating with churches, saturating with gospel-centered, Christ-centered churches who are glorifying God and building His kingdom, not ours. And I can't believe it. I was talking to Gino just the other day about our partnership, the two of us. We met, of course, here in our town of Belpasso, and Gino and I made a partnership, a commitment, a pact about, 6-7 years ago now, where, before he was the pastor of the church, he was just a guy with he was doing ministry in the local church, but, not in the title role of a pastor. And we made a pact because we had a very similar DNA, which is the same three things that I mentioned at the very beginning of this episode: making disciples, planting churches, and building bridges of hope all over Sicily. That's what we're after. And which brings me to another point. We are ready for growth, expanding our borders and getting bigger. The most immediate need right now is to get Gino and me back to the States and in front of new churches and supporters. Mission Sicily, and as well as Gino, we're taking steps of faith this year in exciting and unprecedented ways. I'll tell you this: Gino has left his full-time job, which you probably remember me talking about several times. He hadn't got paid for months. He was doing this work, still waiting to get paid, and finding it difficult to manage the role and responsibilities within the church, and feeling held back from being able to really invest himself in a necessary and helpful way to see more fruit. And so he's taking a huge step of faith this year. We're actually, together with Stefano, we're putting Gino through a process to become part of a mission agency, so that when he and I come back to the States in November, he'll be able to actually do some fundraising as well, to be able to support himself and his family while he's going after things here. I tell you, the momentum buildup we saw in 2022, if it's any indication, that momentum is saying great things about what's coming next. And so he wants to be available and prepared. His life has gotten, not just busier, but making more impact since he left that full-time job just a few weeks ago. And so, just invite your prayer into that as we're coming back in the fall of this year. Probably late October, early November is what we're looking at right now. We're trying to coordinate with some churches and partners to understand when it would be best for both for us, for Gino, and for them, the receiving churches, probably coming to Nashville, maybe Tampa, Florida. I'm not sure if we'll get to California on this trip, but yeah, appreciate your prayers in helping us to discern God's will and timing and all of this. I mean, folks have waited a long time to meet Gino. I've talked about Gino for years and receive him in person, an in-person update directly from our national partner. Maybe one day coming back with Stefano as well would be so exciting. And so, yeah, just appreciate your prayers and look forward to being able to make that happen. let me tell you what else is happening this year. As you know, we're at the beginning of the year, and so I'll have a bit of a broader brush to paint with this time around. Next month, we'll get into some finer details, but let me talk to you about the 5 steps that we're taking right now for the immediate future of this ministry and the expansion. If you look on our GoFundMe page, which you can find a link to at missionsicily.com, 5 points, because I think it's so important to help explain what people are sowing into over and above their monthly donations. And we need both right now, monthly donations and help for this expansion. So where's the money going? So our mission critical steps that we're taking right now is entrusting the leadership of Mission Sicily completely to Gino. And so he will become kind of the head or the flagship partner for this region, enabling the local church to enter the next phase of its building plan. This is setting them up for success and the ability, the capacity to do the things that we've been dreaming about doing for years. More spiritual formation, these disciple-making groups, having classrooms, actually. Oh, it would be so amazing to have separate classrooms where we can have children in one, age-appropriate groups, special functions going on simultaneously. We've never been able to do that before. And empowering us to begin preparation for the launch of Mission Italy. Yep, expanding. Part of our expansion is to move to the north. Some of that is undetermined as far as the location and the time. We could be taking an intermediate step as far as the Naples region, this area by Naples and in the Campania. The region is Campania, but around Naples. It could be as far north as Turin with Stefano. We're praying into that. Would you please pray into these steps with us about expanding, and we're using Stefano this year to a new level, both here in Sicily and for what we hope to do in Italy by the end of the year. And this is equipping us financially to do this relocation. It's not cheap to build a building. It's not cheap to make this kind of an expansion and to move and multiplying our impact and establishing new relationships and new partnerships in those northern regions. And so that's just kind of a little overview of what you're sowing into. If you go to the fundraiser, the GoFundMe fundraiser that you can find the link to in either the newsletter or just go to missionsicily.com and click expand. I want to thank you for an entire decade of faithful prayer and financial support. Your investment has been carefully stewarded and is producing fruit. So thank you for helping us enter phase 2. Quick note on the land, you'll get a little bit of a glimpse in it in one of the videos that we shot just the other day, me and Gino. So excited to show you that. We've got this video recap happening and giving you a little slice of what's been going on with the disciple-making groups, the leaders that are emerging. All of that can be found in the video, and I think the last portion of the video, the third in the little mini-series, we actually show you the land from a bird's eye view and gives you a little bit of an inkling of what's happening, the expansion that we're making there with the land. So, gosh, I am so grateful to have you on board with us doing this mission and this ministry here in Sicily. If you've got questions, comments, want to know more, just hit back to missionsicily@gmail.com. You can reply to the newsletter that you get. Easy ways to find us and to share your thoughts and your prayers, encouragement on Facebook, on Instagram, on the YouTube channel. Again, all of that can be found at missionsicily.com. Love you guys so much. Appreciate your partnership. May God bless you and increase you this year, making you abound to every good work. And we will talk to you very soon. Ciao.